Welcome to the Tuesday, August 2nd rendition of the Government Operations and Regulations Committee meeting. I just had to quorum with council members Hancock, Benedict, Cash, Hall, Roberts, Withers, and Young. Well over quorum. Thank you very much for coming. We have several items on the agenda today. We're going to start with Resolution 2022-1661 by Council Lady Vercher to exempt Recon Huasteco at 2413 Shumat Lane from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. Council Lady.
Have a letter?
I do not have a letter.
We don't have someone.
I'm just saying, she is chairing a rule.
We'll bump it to the heel.
Or like, as far as we know, is she okay with this?
I've not heard anything from her either way.
Yeah, we'll bump it just in case. And then go on to Councilman Hall's Bill 2022-1344 to amend Title V of the Metro Code to establish a development impact fee with an amendment by Councilmember Allen. Would someone like to move?
I'm so moved. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councilman Hall, would you like to
just... I'm saying Councilmember Allen's next door. So really briefly, her amendment. Her amendment's a friendly amendment. I had no issue with it. It's something we worked on, and I was glad to support it.
And would you like to talk about your bill or the amendment?
So, on the impact fee itself, and you guys know this is actually the third time that I brought this up. Last term and then last year. And immediately after I did it, the mayor, finance director went to ask for it also up on Capitol Hill. Well, the disconnect was they think we should pass something here and see if they're going to preempt it or not. We think we shouldn't pass something here and wait for them to pass something there, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's in 93 or 95 counties, never lost a lawsuit anywhere, has not negatively impacted growth in any place that it exists. Bottom line is something that is great for Davidson County. We didn't meet barely the requirement for 20% growth. We were at 14.2, but there's a lot of conversation at the state level, again, saying we'll pass something to see if we'll preempt it. We're willing to have the conversation and meet about it, but I think more so here in the room, everybody's still reluctant to push that envelope. I'm not. I mean, we pushed the envelope on a lot of stuff that we know could create some backlash or something from the state, on a regular basis here. So depending on the formula that you use, right? For example, and we were talking about the $2 per square foot, there were some questions about the difference between if you were doing a duplex or if you were doing a regular commercial building or the square footage, where we wanted to adjust that. And what I tried to do is come in between Wilson County and Williamson County. Depending on whether you're talking about $2 or $3, I said 2, that puts us at a $20 million per billion. We did $6 billion in permits last year. It's $120 million in reoccurring revenue for Metro, just on its face. Impact fees will always be a great idea for us. It's just a matter of when we decide we want to, again, push that envelope and see what the state does, and if the state's going to tell us what they told the mayor and finance director last time. Go pass something and let's see if we like it or not while we're working on legislation here.
Do we have any questions?
Just not so much a question, but statement, I guess, for the Committee on Planning and Zoning. We had a good discussion about it yesterday, and our committee in Planning and Zoning voted to apply the amendment and then to defer for one meeting. But welcome any.
So I guess because I got into it, but that was
similar or different questions. But
that was going to be the end result to get the amendment on or approved and then defer one meeting.
Do you have any questions, Councilman?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Cash had waved earlier, but I sorry.
Well, what if I wave with 2 hands?
You can be next.
So I want to be clear on, so you kind of gave us a sense of the formula, like 20, we would get 20 million per billion, so that's a 2%, and that's based on the project cost, the property value,
Well, you're charging a fee per square foot on residential one price and another price for commercial, and that's why I said I was splitting the difference, because if Williamson County, for example, is $5, that's just insane. We couldn't probably get away splitting the difference between Wilson and Williamson. And again, these are also based on, those were the two examples. Those were the two that went all the way through the court process and have never lost a court case. Matter of fact, it's not lost in any county that has it.
So that's square foot of the building?
So,
There's Councilman Young.
Thank
Two
you,
hands.
thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. So, I feel like this might be a little cart before the horse, or maybe the more appropriate way to do this. You know, in my experience for 10 years now on another government body I sit on, is that if there is something from the state that we would like and want to do, we pass a resolution requesting that and saying, you know, that is something we would like to have and we would like to implement. Rather than going ahead and spending the time and effort to come up with what it is we want to do and then and pass it and put it in code, even though it's not enforceable and it is not, my understanding, lawful under TCA. I am not against, you know, the conversation and implementation of some impact fees. I just don't know that that this is the right way about it, and I would feel better. I mean, and I know we'll probably end up deferring, but you know, if Mr. Morrison from our relations team at the legislature, or Ms. Hauser was here from the mayor's office on, you know, where does the, yeah, I know, I texted her, asked her to come in here, but she might be tied up with something else. You know, I would feel better hearing from the folks that are actually representing us at the legislature every day, what they think is what we need to be doing on this. Because I just don't know that spending the time to go through all of this and asking a department to spend the time to research and do this is appropriate. So that's where I'm at on it. I mean, yielding defer, but I'm uncomfortable advancing it at this point without a little more clarification.
And I can say,
And before we go to more questions, Hannah, could you answer the question on whether it's lawful or not when we have this only effective upon the enactment of?
Right, so technically, I mean, it does not violate any state law because it will not be effective unless there's a state law that's adopted.
that's the actual language.
Currently, under state law, counties cannot have impact fees unless they've reached certain growth thresholds. Some counties have met those growth thresholds. Other counties are allowed to have impact fees through other exemptions, like having a private act that predated the law. So that's like Williamson County is in that boat, but they also, I think, actually met the growth threshold of the Tennessee County Powers Relief Act, but.
Yeah, I was asking about the kind of the formula earlier. So a couple more questions about that. Is it different for residential and commercial? I mean, you kind of implied it was. What's the difference?
It would be 2 for commercial and 1 for residential.
Did we not give you a copy of the? Oh, yes,
he was-
it's in the amendment that you don't have a copy of. Here, let me
And-
show you this.
And
thought you had-
what's it supposed to go towards? Is it earmarked?
Infrastructure and housing, our 2 greatest problems. Development pays for 70%
Into
of.
the housing fund, or?
Well, I mean, you need money for affordable housing and you need money for infrastructure. Development pays for 70% of all of our infrastructure costs anyway. And so if you look at it in terms of whatever the developers are paying, the reason why developers aren't screaming and jumping from the rafters pushing back on this is because we're constantly doing participation agreements and because they're the ones responsible for doing the infrastructure. And so they would actually be able to get this money back the more they build. They're literally funding themselves.
And Councilor Roberts?
I got a few questions. So how much is Wilson, what are they charging? You said we were between them, $1?
Yeah,
Yeah, I figured. And so how many counties in Tennessee are
all
doing this?
93 out of 95.
Okay. And so cities like Belmead and Oak Hill that have their own governments that do it by cubic feet instead of square feet, how does
It
that
doesn't
work?
apply to them because we subsidize them.
At all?
I mean, It would only apply to them or affect them in a negative way if we were trying to do something like a Williamson with that $5. You're looking at the average square foot
I gotcha.
for the development in those areas. And you're not seeing that commercial development in a Belmead or an Oak Hill. Even while we touch with Goodlettsville and Lakeview and other places like that,
That's
Bellevue.
the thing, I don't know.
And my last question is, so I was negatively impacted by the whole in lieu fee, meaning that I was second in the city and gave almost $2 million in lieu money and got 0 sidewalks from it. So needless to say, I'm pretty pissed about that still.
Personally
And
or
so
as a
what am I
council
gonna
member?
say? Both. And so what I'm asking is, where does this infrastructure money go? Does it go to the district or does it go to the city as a whole? Because with city as a whole, I can't get behind that. It's happened to me once. I mean, I like the legislation, but I don't think that's fair and equitable. So who,
No,
you know,
I
how
don't
it's
either,
divided?
and that's one of the reasons, since I hit the door, it's always been that conversation too in terms of equity, because just looking at my district as an example, the geographic mass that it is, on that map, and it got bigger during redistricting, but we're still 70% on septic and propane with no internet access along all of our edges. It's some of the worst infrastructure you'll ever find. So, of course, I'd want to target districts or wanted it to go that way, and NDOT didn't have a problem with it. So one of the reasons for the deferral was I want to get an opinion from them, because there were conversations before I reintroduced this with NDOT about impact fees, because they were aware that I had done it before, and wherever Ms. Alagorn came from before, she was a fan of them. And so that's part of the reason for the deferral also.
Any other questions?
That, and then, excuse me real quickly, because again, there were several meetings, Vice Mayor and other people, over the last week, even this weekend, with the state legislature about this and their willingness to do this.
Councilmember Bennett?
Thank you. So I am a fan of looking at the possibility of impact fee. I am not okay with a trigger law that automatically puts this in place. I like Councilman Young's comments in regards to seeking this via resolution, so that when the state does something, then we can do this study, then we can, things that are in this legislation already. But the other piece that I'm concerned with is that the median home price in Davidson County was $425,000 in January of this year, and it's $475,000 today. So what has the industry said about this? And on the residential side of things, is the plan to pass that on to the consumer so that we're going to continue to see additional inaffordability of housing here while trying to create affordable housing? So I haven't spoken with anybody from the industry, and I haven't heard anything from the industry, but my concern would be that this is going to make housing even more unaffordable while we're already growing at the highest rate increase that I've ever seen. So that's where my concerns are, Chair, and I'm not necessarily opposed to putting the amendment on here, but I would actually seek an indefinite deferral, not just a one-meeting deferral. I would like to get some, maybe not indefinite, my apologies for that. I would like to hear from the industry and understand what their plan is and how they would manage this, and would they absorb it? Likely not. So how is that going to get passed on to Nashvillians?
So did we have someone move the amendment?
I'm happy to make the amendment.
And for clarity, in 3 attempts, there was concern on the side from the Realtors Association, but not from developers themselves. And there's a reason why the administration didn't change it when they took it to Capitol Hill to try to get it after I did it last year.
And so we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Opposed to the amendment?
No, I was raising a question. I was aye on the amendment. Sorry. I too was putting the cart for the horse.
Now, does anyone have any comments on the bill as amended? Yes, Councilman Young.
Deferred by roll.
Do what?
Because it was deferred in another committee.
No.
Is it deferred by
I'm
roll?
gonna
That's what I was
move an
asking.
indefinite deferral, because I don't think this is the right way to go about it.
Second.
All in favor of an indefinite deferral?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Okay.
Wait.
All in favor of an indefinite deferral of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Was that 3?
Could you guys raise
Wait,
hands,
wait.
actually?
Yeah,
Because
I'm sorry.
This will
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was a double negative.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
1, 2, 3,
I'm sorry, can I ask a
4.
question first before I vote? Who made that motion?
I made a motion.
Councilmember Young,
Yeah.
And
seconded by
Well,
Benedict.
but was there a motion already on the floor? We did the amendment. She already had a motion on the floor before
I
that.
did have a motion on the floor.
For the
Oh,
one meeting
a
deferral.
motion for a one meeting deferral, and an indefinite deferral does not trump that motion, is that correct?
Okay, I didn't realize she had that.
Is-
Okay.
Is that correct?
Well, so you were on a motion to approve the amendment. That passed, there was no motion
We
to
approved the
defer
amendment.
on the floor.
Right.
I mean, I did not hear
Yeah.
one
Okay, so-
after the passage of the amendment.
She's
Correct.
right. Mine was a motion to approve. Yours was a motion. You're right. She's right. So
And-
that is on the floor.
And so we did a vote. Do we want to do that vote again, or are we
So-
still the four?
Well, you can just pick back up with your vote on his motion then,
Right.
because hers, we got the
We
amendment
did that.
on,
Do we want
right.
to, does anyone else want to change their vote, or are we still?
Are we at a point where it has to be an indefinite deferral, or can it be a one?
The motion on the floor is to defer indefinitely.
And it's
Yeah.
already one meeting deferral in planning and budget.
And we had 4 in favor of an indefinite deferral.
I'm against it. Did I, you have me as in favor?
Yeah, we had you
I'm
in
against-
favor.
I'm against
Okay,
the motion.
so we have 3 for
Three.
indefinite deferral. How many against?
Against indefinite.
Against an
1,
indefinite
2,
deferral.
3. And then how many abstain?
I'm against. Are you
Okay.
looking at me? Yeah.
Yes, okay, so 4. And no abstentions. And so the motion fails
I'll move a one meeting deferral
There, I'll second
with a
that.
re-referral.
to our
Back
committee.
to commit, yeah.
Re-referral. All in favor of a one meeting deferral?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, so we have a one meeting deferral with a referral back to our meeting, deferral and referrals, that's really confusing. And next item on the agenda is BL 2022-1373 by Evans and Hancock to amend Chapter 1064 of the Metro Code pertaining to the Fire Prevention Code, Section 13351 of the NFPA 101 Life Safety Code. Is anyone here to discuss this
Fire marshal is present.
particular amendment? Do we want to move
So
the
moved.
bill?
Move.
Yes,
Second.
thank you. Would you like to talk about this resolution? Any?
I'll be glad to answer any questions, but there's a whole lot to talk about. There's two of them, the fire code book's about 1,000 pages, the life safety's about the same, so. I'll
So
be
just
more-
kind of updating all the books?
So the life safety code is getting updated by the amendment of changing existing occupancies to have a fire suppression system from 100 occupants to 200. And that, what that does is the smaller businesses and historical not to have to add fire suppression systems. And it's been, and that's been in the life safety code since, I believe, 2006, when it became part of the NFPA. And then the other one is added in the fire code was for NFPA 1 is to, got to do with the private fire hydrants and Metro's water request for instead of inspecting them annually to be semi-annually. So that was the other one.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions? I think that was a fantastic explanation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And next item on the agenda is to have a brief presentation from our special committee. We just had a meeting last week to talk about the contract with Ernst & Young and how we're studying real estate, Metro-owned real estate, and leases in particular. Everybody can view that specially called committee meeting online for more details. Would you guys like to take the floor?
Sure, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Just prepared a few slides to present the plan and our approach to supporting with the master plan for the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County. The first slide, I guess I'll introduce myself, Catherine Von Sager, an executive director at Ernst & Young and serving as the engagement executive on this project. I've been with Ernst & Young in our real estate advisory practice for almost 25 years, so have supported many clients, both commercial and public sector, with real estate planning, strategic planning, location strategy, org design, pretty much anything from an end-to-end real estate perspective on making a portfolio more efficient and less expensive. So, my colleague, Mark, introduce himself.
Mark Held, 14 years with UI. I focus on government and public sector real estate, more specifically state and local clients. Really happy to be project manager on this, and thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for being here.
So page 2 is just an overview of the team that's involved with the project. We have a core team that we've been working with closely as we gather information, ask questions, schedule interviews, view sites. You can see the EY team listed on the bottom right with Waddell Wright, who's a local market support for our project, providing some of the some market insights around rates and trends within the Nashville area, as well as the steering committee members on the left. And we just had our first steering committee meeting earlier today. Page 3 is just a very high-level project overview. Our goal and objective is to develop a comprehensive real estate master plan. We're looking to do that as 2 phases. This first phase is focused on some of the priority projects. We'll talk through those in a moment. Phase 2 will look at the portfolio more broadly and develop a more comprehensive master plan, longer term. Also, we'll look at some of the operating of the metro real estate and facilities to support those operations going forward. The graphic on this page is really comprehensively what we kind of look at when we talk about real estate and real estate master planning. It's not just looking at the physical building of the space, but we're also thinking about how people work in the space from a workplace strategy perspective. Very big now is technology within the space, being able to support more hybrid ways of working and employee experience, collaboration. And then there's the more tactical aspects of how do we do the deal and how do we build the building and fit it out. So all components that we think of when we're pulling together a master plan and need to be part of the timing and the thinking. If we go to the next slide, page 4, this is just a detail of the project and the tasks. So we're currently about 3 weeks into task 1, which is our current state assessment. It's a 14-week engagement that we're looking to wrap up.
Present and accounted for, sir.
That we're looking to wrap up towards the middle of October. So as part of the first task, the objectives are to assess the real estate portfolio and provide some high-level recommendations and next steps, really as it relates to these key priority projects with some leases that we have expiring that we need to quickly determine what we're going to do with those departments and agencies within those spaces. And the deliverables are set out below, but where we are currently in the process is data collection, spending a lot of time pulling together the information on the comprehensive portfolio, both owned and leased, as well as land and some unique assets that sit within there. Conducting interviews with departments and agencies to understand their space needs, both headcount growth, new ways of working that are impacting the amount and type of space they need. Some of the agencies have new missions or new programs that they're rolling out. So some of the unique aspects of how they deliver their services and how those need to be accounted for from a real estate perspective. Conducted some site visits. We'll be working over the next, you can see in the timeline actually on the next page, we'll be working on the current state baseline through the month of August, early September, and then coming back with those recommendations and opportunities towards the end of September, early October timeframe.
Super. This is a very detailed presentation. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for the group?
Yes.
Councilman Cash?
At our meeting last week, I talked about 3 different things, but one of them was about childcare, that in this city, we have a lot of employees, people in general, but I'm sure that includes Metro employees who have childcare needs that probably can impact their productivity, performance, attendance. We also have, but childcare centers are, there's a dearth for space for these. And so I recommended that be something considered in the planning of how to use all our real estate. And I guess I'm just wondering if that's a possibility and where that might fit in like this wheel on page 3. Like, is that a workplace strategy or?
Probably the real estate strategy piece. I think, we received the feedback from the meeting last week about the childcare, and we, asked about what the need is. Is it a need for Metro employees? Is it a need for the broader community? Are there certain markets or, areas of the community that don't have these needs? It was not part of our study, but we are looking as we move into the second phase at available space and, vacant real estate. But I think we need to kind of understand what is the actual need for the childcare facilities. Is it size? Many of them I know are private sector.
Right. Well, and I was going to add to that really quickly. Even through last term, all the way up to now, it's come up multiple times because it's something that's always been on the chamber's radar about the last decade. And it has increased drastically. And so it was a huge component in the conversation as we were doing MLS and started down the road of community benefits agreements, the absolute need for those. And it's not just from a Metro employees. It's huge for Metro employees, but it is a citywide need across the spectrum. Regardless of what area of the town you're in, there's a very big shortage because a lot of those properties were lost in a combination of things over the last few years. And so I can tell you firsthand, because it was something my family used to be involved in, I can tell you 100 that have closed down in the last 5 years because they were leasing properties that they couldn't maintain, taxes, a variety of things. And so it's created some issues for a lot of families.
And I think with our agreement last week, as you reiterated today, was to move that on to task 2 because task 1 is just taking a look at all of our current facilities and seeing what they're doing now. Yes, Councilman Cash.
If I could ask the gentleman, I'm sorry I didn't catch your name.
Mark.
Mark. It sounds like what you're bringing to the table is that you've got a breadth of experience in multiple, I guess, like city and state governments and working on this kind of plan. Right. Is childcare something that comes up in other plans?
It's something that comes up in discussion. It's not something specifically that we've looked at before, but it could be a scenario that we look at in task 2.
Yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, we've heard the federal government talk about it with, different plans that have been stalled in Congress, as all things are these days. I don't know why we don't say a do-nothing Congress. We used those terms in the 80s. Maybe nobody's was around back then.
Dating this.
But anyway, so, one of the things that we're looking at is this is a huge need and it is a civic need. And so as I think about future needs and potential federal dollars reaching us for these needs, then I think about it more in the public sector rather than the private sector. So although it is something that I know hasn't been in scope so far, I appreciate that you're beginning to look at that. And I would love to look at it from both a public and a private need. I think that if we have, typically the families in my district drop their kids off at school, and they might have other kids that then they're dropping off somewhere else. So if we had, I've talked about this in the committee meeting, if we have a charter school, for instance, that's mostly or partly empty in some areas of it, would that not be a great spot for us to either outsource daycare, childcare of some sort, or have that, provided by the city? And, with that in mind, those are the kinds of ideas that I'd like to pursue, but I also don't want to get too far outside of the scope because it is a big task already.
Councilman Withers?
It occurs to me that HR Director Shannon Hall is part of the steering committee as well as the core team for this project, and specifically for Metro employees would be an invaluable source engaging what the need is for Metro employees to
Yes,
have
absolutely.
this service at a specific
Yes.
location.
That's really the point. I'm Philbin Hunter, Interim Director of General Services, and we did have, as Catherine said, our first steering committee meeting today, and Shannon, we did bring up childcare, and Shannon is going to be a great resource there because she remembers several studies that have been done over the years, and she had some great information about the priorities for Metropolitan. Now, her studies are all around Metro employees, not the larger community, But we also discussed at our steering committee is who is the right group to study the need metro-wide? Because it's probably, no offense to our real estate team, but the need is not something I think they would really study. Somebody else would study the need, and then they would look for the proper space. So we heard you, and we are working on the right qualified people to make the decision about the need for Metro employees, for the community at large. Also looking at what resources are out there with Metro National Public Schools, whether they have because I think they have preschool in some, I don't know if they're in your districts, but I think they do have some. That's another thing you ask us to do is reach out to schools, which we've done that too to understand. And the steering committee did, per your recommendation, agree to add schools to the committee so that we can hear from them. So I want to report back on those things.
And I was just going to say, in addition to the chamber, Ms. Hubbard in housing, because of her time with MDHA, covered that extensively for the whole county, especially through the last 2 fair housing assessments. So that's another great resource, and that's data that's already on tap from 2017 and 2020 that you can readily touch.
That's great. We have a meeting with her tomorrow. So I'm glad for that suggestion. We'll bring it up.
Sounds like it's rolling along well, and we're going to go to our last, which was our first item on the agenda, RS 2022-1664 by Councilor Vercher to exempt Recon Huesteco at 2413 Schumach Lane from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit. She was able to come in and give some information.
Second, and yes, I spoke with, Councilmember Vercher had to go to another committee meeting and popped in here in between, and she is in support of this, and she did ask that this committee approve it.
And does anyone have any questions?
I usually ask, what are we, it's too close to what that it needs a permit, do we know? Minimum distance from a.
I mean,
didn't
so
bring my phone, so I
the rule
can't
is like
Google Map.
homes, churches, schools, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what in particular it is with this particular
Okay.
property, but I can try to look.
No, it's not. That's okay.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much, and that concludes the Tuesday, August 2nd rendition of the Government Operations and Regulations Committee meeting. We will see you in 11 minutes in the council chambers. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
This is the latest they've ever had us start, so we didn't really run long.